Hello, welcome back to my channel, Leah Parsons, and this week's topic is about the ego. And we can take so many different directions when we're talking about the ego. It's so fascinating. It's a topic that I love exploring, but it wasn't always that way. That voice inside of us that so we can think about ego in different ways. So sometimes maybe just ask yourself right now, what do I think about when somebody says ego? Is it somebody who kind of walks into a room and takes up all the space, takes over the conversations to tell you about how important they are and what they've done with their life, this kind of superiority? Is that your sense of what of inflated ego? So that would be maybe an inflated ego. But there's many ways that the ego shows up. We all have one. It's not good or bad. It's just that we have one. And one of the ways the ego shows up, so we have many voices in our head, as I'm sure you are aware, that we have a nice voice, a not so nice voice. But the ego voice is one, unless you start excavating and getting curious about your own inner experience, because we can talk a lot about other people and look out there and see what's happening or see our own behavior. But unless we get super curious about what our own inner experience is, we aren't going to get to the deeper layers of healing. And of course, most of these videos I talk about are about healing. So for me, the ego was a voice I was afraid of, or it kept me in check. It kept me playing small. It's like, who do you think you are to go out and get a university degree? After my daughter was born, I was a single mom, and I had been a high school dropout for a long time because of my own childhood traumas, my own identity crisis. At 14, I was raped, and then I discovered that my biological mother was actually someone in the family. I was adopted. So all these things happened in a matter of months, right? So I had a crisis, a real huge crisis with no way to kind of navigate those things within me. So my life spiraled really quick. So that, of course, this is a Reader's Digest version of this time in my life. I can look back at it now and not feel sadness, not feel pain, because I've come so far since then. And those things have taught me so much. I'm not going to say I'm grateful those things happened. I'm going to say that that was part of my path to help me grow and move forward. So I was a high school dropout. I got into a lot of trouble with drinking and drugs and low self-esteem and all of the things. And so I had been out of school for a very long time. And by the time Ratea came along, my first child, so I wasn't no longer drinking and doing drugs. I was 29 at that point, but I had still not finished high school. So going to university was really scary for me. It was terrifying. And the thought of even speaking in public terrified me. So here's me thinking about going to school, because I promised Ratea as a baby, I made a promise that I was going to be the best mom that I could. And so that meant I had to go back and get an education. And how that was going to turn out, I didn't know. So I did get my high school equivalency. Then I started looking for all the programs and emailing professors and calling and seeing which courses and program I didn't have to speak in public. I didn't have to debate in class. So imagine skirting around all of the things, and we all do it in some form or another. Skirting around all the ways so we can avoid that big fearful thing, the thing you're afraid of. You have to spend your days navigating around it instead of facing it and moving through it. But at that time, that's what I was doing. So I was terrified. So the ego, the part of me, the critic, you can call it the inner critic, the ego, the negative part, but this is the important piece to remember. That part of you that's the inner critic that tells you not to play too big, not to go for what you really want, whether it's in a partner, in a job, in your life. Don't go too big. Play safe. It's that part of you that I'm talking about. It's that voice that was developed when you were a small child. And it was the best possible scenario that a small you could come up with to navigate your surroundings. Whether it was not getting your needs met, or having a parent who was explosive and impatient, or whether it was a not feeling heard, or there's too many kids in the home. Whatever that was for you, and whatever you had to do at that time, the ego starts getting developed. The ego comes in and starts protecting you. So the ego is not our enemy. The ego was actually a part of you that was a genius to come up with coping mechanisms. So the ego steps in and develops a plan of action that we're not even aware of, that I'm going to shut down, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be this, whatever that is, it comes in. So we have to be very kind to that part of us, because it won't go away, and as a matter of fact, it gets amplified. But it doesn't always work for us as adults. And I spoke about this before, but in this scenario, in this video, the ego will tell you, like it did for me when I started university, you can't do that. Like, you're not smart enough to go to university. You can't write papers and do research. You haven't done those things before. There's no way you're going to be able to do that. And you have a new baby. Oh no, go get a job, work full time somewhere, and do the best you can. But there was a piece of me and a part of me that I was listening to at that time, that I listen to now every day, behind all that. So that's why we have to excavate and look at our own inner experience. Do you know what your inner truth feels like when you hear it? Do you know, behind the clutter of the mind, that essence that is you, your soul, your calling, your spirit, whatever that is for you, your higher self? Can you listen to that? Are you able to access that? Because that's the important part. We have to drop behind all of this chatter going on that tells us all the reasons why we can't. So I call that fighting for your limitations. Instead of doing that, saying, I don't know how I'm going to do that paper, do the research, or maybe I won't even get through the first year of university. But I'm going to try, and I'm going to put everything I have into it. And I'm not going to come up with excuses. I'm going to show up, because there is something deeper within me. There is something deeper within me that always kind of wanted to go to university. Because even though I was a high school dropout, I loved to learn. I loved to read. So just because my trauma kind of kept me in a spiral for many, many years, there was another part of me behind that wanted to, I just wanted knowledge. I just wanted to know and learn things. So I didn't listen to that voice. And this is the important part about our ego. We can acknowledge it, and it's coming from a place of fear. So imagine you talking to a small child and saying, you know what? I know you're afraid. You're afraid of failure. You're afraid this, you won't be able to follow through. You're afraid of your own abilities, your capabilities. But what if you don't try it at all? How are you going to feel? Are you going to just shove that part of you away every time it comes up? Are you going to just push it down and say, no, I can't. I'm too old. I'm too this. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. Or are you going to just take a step? And so for me, taking that step and putting all into it, and I knew, even if I only made it 1 year, I knew that I was putting everything I had into it. And if it wasn't for me, then it wasn't going to work out. And I was okay with that. So whatever it is going on in your life, when that voice comes up that tells you all the reasons why you can't do something, if you break it down into just small steps and say, at least I'm going to step forward, or whether it's even, maybe it's even ending a bad relationship or ending a job you don't like, because that's another voice, right? This isn't for you. You shouldn't do that. I'm writing about this right now in my book that I'm writing, so this is why I'm sharing it with you. And so I might have shared a little bit of similar things in last week's video, but I'm writing about this right now, so it's really fresh for me. And once upon a time, I didn't believe that I'd follow through on things. And so when we think, I'm not going to follow through, we actually don't follow through. But what if you just said, I'm going to do, maybe it's just exercise or eating, because I've done it with every aspect of my life pretty much. But not all at once. It all unfolds as it unfolds, because the next thing comes to you intuitively from that place of knowing. So when the ego comes in and tells you that you're not good enough, or that's not for you, that's for other people, or you shouldn't do this, you know the last time you did this, what happened? When those voices come in, just stop and be present for them, and then validate it and say, you know what, I'm really called to do this. I think I am going to enroll in that class or take that guitar lesson, or whatever it is. Because if you do reverse engineering in your life, and let's pretend you're now 75 years old and you're looking back in your life, do you want to say that you gave up on everything that you wanted to do? Do you want to say that I just couldn't do it because my trauma, my pain, all of this was in the way? So just stepping into your day and your life, acknowledging what's going on inside of me. What is my internal dialogue about this scenario, that scenario? Pick a scenario. What is my inner dialogue? And then start working with that. It'll show up over and over and over again. And then we start working with that little by little. But it comes from a place of radical self-love and compassion. That's what I wanted to share with you today. I am running my program, Soul Speak. It's my signature program. It doesn't start till January. I run it twice a year. So if you really want to take a deeper dive into your journey of deep healing, and that you want a mentor to walk you through it, that's me. I can help you walk through it. My experience and your experience are not the same, but what is the same is you have to go in to come out, and I can help you walk through that in the mind, the body, and the spirit. You can't do it from the mind to the mind. You actually have to incorporate all three. And it's a beautiful journey. It really is. And it's so worth it because you're worth it. I'll see you next week. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to share this out with somebody, please copy the link and share it out. And I'll see you again next week.